the number one thing that holds us back is
It takes courage, and courage, it's not necessarily a renewable resource. Sometimes it gets fatigued, right?
Welcome, friends, to the Reiki Women podcast, an exploration into the profound depths of the system of Reiki from a Japanese spiritual perspective and how that relates to our modern lives.
we are keeping it real to Reiki's origins, challenging the New Age stereotype that things like crystals, chakras, and angels are authentic aspects of the system. I'm Bronwen Logan, and when I'm not writing best-selling books about the Japanese system of Reiki, 75,000 readers and counting, I'm here debunking outmoded Reiki myths and coaching individuals and groups through my website, Reiki with Bronwen.
And I'm Michaela Daystar, lead teacher and weaver of Heartscapes Reiki, connecting the dots between Reiki and environmental and social justice, because our individual healing cannot be extracted from healing relationship with the collective and with the land.
And I'm Carrie Varela from the Reiki Healing Society, here to help you transform your Reiki practice into a thriving, prosperous business. Because while passion fuels your purpose, it's time to make it sustainable, authentic, and beautifully you. We're three women diving into the heart of Japanese Reiki. We're building a community that centers women's voices and inspires well-being. We're not just for women, we're for everybody. Come join the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reiki Women podcast. Today it's Bronwen and I, and we had a little chat before we began this episode. Hi, Bronwen. Good to see you. Gosh, your face is so radiant and bright, and your hair looks gorgeous today. Looking good, lady.
Well, I did hear that podcast, Flatten Your Hair, just so you know. Anyone watching this, just make sure your hair is a bit pumped up, because otherwise you get a flat head.
That's usually not my problem. Take this whole thing and everybody's, oh my God, what happened to your head? It's shrunken. It's just a little fluffed. Well, the humor, I hope we can bring humor to this conversation, because it probably needs some humor, because our conversation today, we thought we'd want to give light and voice to is the things that are holding us back from our Reiki business. Whether it's you want to start your Reiki business and there's all these hangups in your hangup closet that you kind of have to work through in order to get to that place where you feel comfortable and you're excited about offering Reiki sessions, Reiki courses, and maybe other things that you're offering inside of your healing arts business. Or even things that we kind of continuously have to work through as practitioners that show up again and again, and kind of recreating a new language around that and working through our own resistance.
Yeah.
Bronwen, what do you think about this topic? How has it shaped you as a practitioner, and what have you seen others really struggle with?
Yeah. We could see it from a business perspective, and people at all different times in their business. Also, just in your private Reiki world, resistance can be there in stopping us from actually just practicing. So that's probably something we may get to in this discussion or not. But we'll start with the business thing. Yeah. If you've got a business, something that's really important, and it has to do with pumping your hair up, and that is visibility, I think. Yeah. So we have to make ourselves visible in some way. And whatever that might be, there's a lot to this subject. I just realized, do you need a brand? Shouldn't you have a brand? You could say you don't need a brand, you just need to be yourself. Or you could say you need to be a very curated brand. And I know, Carrie, you have done lots of classes on this, so maybe you could tell us something about that. I'd be really interested. I think I'd just like to start with this idea of visibility, and that at the basis of all of that is that we need to know ourselves as best we can in this moment. Yeah. So the more that we know ourselves, the more that we have a sense of how we should respond to things, how we should be putting ourselves out there. If we have a strong sense of ourselves and we can really gain that by practicing the system of Reiki. So the two actually go really beautifully in hand. The number one thing that holds us back is not having a sense of ourselves and who we are. And the system of Reiki is something that actually helps us with that. So we have the benefits of when we practice that we are learning more about ourselves, who we are, and what that might mean about who we are putting out there and what we are making visible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a huge hang up that people often maybe subconsciously come up against or consciously is a fear of visibility. And well, what's in that? And this has been a really big theme for me lately. But I think in some of that is a discomfort of being seen.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Fear of judgment, somebody else judging us, judging our hair. Is it flat? Is it this? Is it that? Are we overweight, underweight? And so many threads of that kind of come from just this toxic societal pressures that so many women face of keeping it all together, being beautiful, being confident, but not too confident because then you're bossy, or you can't be peddling things on social media to make money because you should just not need to have money or something like that. There's just a lot of little double standards that impact us. But and it could probably even come even deeper than that, with especially in the healing world and spiritual world. Of course, women who had spiritual gifts in centuries prior to us often held were burned at the stake. It's the witch's wound, where our visibility, especially when it comes to sharing our gifts and wisdom, there's kind of instinctive ancestral fear that might be there. And thankfully we live in a different world now, but
Yeah.
that fear of being seen is quite intense. But actually I think it really relates back to what you were saying, Bronwen, is because what I've really learned is that when I'm being my most authentic self and just expressing something that's true and real and relevant for me, that I actually have no idea how it will be perceived.
Yeah.
Before I teach a yoga class, I might have some beautiful intention for the class. I have no idea how it will be received. I
Yeah.
have no idea how this post will be received by my social media accounts and so forth. I have no idea how I will be received by a client, by my Reiki students, all of that. And I hope that whatever I give out with this intention of being authentic and sharing love and sharing my honest and real life perspective, that it will resonate with somebody else. And I've seen that time and time again. But I think when I come up, we're actually at the Reiki Business Summit recently, and Christian Standing Stone. If you're listening, Christian, hi. We love you. It was a great weekend. And he talked about how anytime he writes any piece of marketing, an email in particular or a post, he thinks of one person in his community and he writes the post or the email to that person.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I think that's such a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And yet, what I think I've really faced in my life is that every time I write something, I think of I'm actually talking to my most self-critical voice.
Yeah.
I'm like, what can I put out there that won't make me feel criticized or judged? And I tend to be very much I cringe sometimes if there's a spelling mistake or grammatical error, things like that, which I know I see all the time on other things, but it tends towards this perfectionism,
Yeah.
which is just all this kind of very vicious cycle.
And it's that
But
pleasing everyone thing too, actually,
mm,
which never works ever.
and if you are a people pleaser, listen to one of our episodes. It was breaking free from being the pleaser. Oh,
Yeah.
that was a really good one. I think that one
Yeah, I
just
loved it.
stirred up a lot in me for sure. But yeah, this visibility is a wound, but it's also quite profound when we can actually show up and be our authentic self and be loved and admired and respected for who we are.
Yeah.
And if we don't create space for that, whoever our audience will receive it with that, then we can't feel that ourselves. And we're unlikely to take in the encouragement and the acknowledgement that we actually are getting.
That's so true. All the beautiful words that come to all of us, and yet we remember only the ones that are a little disgruntled or aren't quite what we would want. It's just amazing that we do that, and that strength that we need in ourselves to hold our space. And that is once again something that we can work with in the system of Reiki, relying on that gut and holding that strength inside of ourselves and knowing how much we can take of something. We were just talking before this. I was saying, oh, sometimes I don't feel very brave. And then I said, but I'm not sure I have to be brave. For me, it could be a flaw, this idea that you need to be brave. Maybe something inside of me as a young person that I was told that I should be brave. So there's that thing of always pushing into that, which makes me feel not brave, by the way, because if you're trying to push into something, you're not actually it. There's a, what would you call that? Like a tension between those two things. And yet, really, sitting back into the self and being this or seeing the self is probably incredibly brave if we can think of it in those terms instead of the external pushing outwards. Are you brave,
Yeah.
Carrie?
Yeah.
I think
I'm
you're
super
brave.
brave. I'm very brave. I think you're very brave, Bronwyn. I love your bravery. You inspire bravery in me. But yeah, I think if we get back to the original topic, that the things that hold you back is it takes courage.
Yeah, it does.
It takes courage, and
Mm.
courage. It's not necessarily a renewable resource. Sometimes it's just it gets fatigued, right? When
Mm.
you're just having to be courageous over and over again. But usually there should be some reward from that courage, right?
Mm.
I've been really realizing this too. There's a vulnerability piece around teaching yoga for sure, and I held myself back from teaching yoga in the town that I live in, this tiny 300-person town. There's a lot of people in the outside or surrounding area, but the town itself is very small. And I wanted to teach yoga there, but it was this courage piece where I know I'd have to make flyers. I know I'd have
Mm.
to advertise. I know I'd have to do all the work to teach yoga classes because there's no yoga studio there. So it would just be me.
Yeah.
And I held myself back from doing that for a long time. And still with my online yoga, I really want to teach more yoga online. Kind of holding myself back from it. Mostly it's because of just how much work it will take. But last year, I really broke through that and was F it, I'm going for it. I need to teach yoga. This is a need here. I want to do it. It will be something I can do. Drop my kids off at school and I can go teach a yoga class. That seems fine. And it was terrifying.
Mm.
It was terrifying for a few times, because most of the time, because I was
Mm.
terrified nobody would show up. Sometimes nobody should just show up. Or kind of the more uncomfortable thing was one or two people show up. There's safety in numbers,
Yeah.
which is, oh, this is correct, whatever. But I've learned to just make light of it,
Yeah.
just make the best out of the experience. And now, and the other thing was every week I have to send a text. I have this text message chain for the class. I don't really advertise on social media with this because it's just, I never have the time or energy for it. But I want to keep the people who have been coming to the class keep going with it. And then it's the courage to take every week, remind people to show up. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm blabbering on and on about this, but it
No.
takes a lot. And then to show up and teach and be authentic and to be yourself. But you know what? Today, in these last few weeks, I've just really seen how much it's paid off, how relaxed and comfortable actually I am in this space, and how have great
Oh, so good.
clients who come every week and they love it and they're getting so much out of it, and
Yeah.
they're growing, the classes are growing. It shouldn't always be that way. There's that learning curve right at the beginning, but then there should be some reward for it. But I think that's when you have to decipher for yourself, am I getting out of this that is
Yeah. Yeah, that's that
Versus,
thing of not pushing into something that isn't going to work, for example, and knowing that. And that's part of knowing yourself as well. I'm thinking about when I started Reiki with Bronwen, I gradually, at the beginning of it, added 3 online regular courses. And one of them wasn't really successful. And I wasn't really comfortable in it. And it didn't really work. And at what point do you go, actually, I'm not going to do that anymore? Yeah. And you just have to go, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. And it's a really good feeling to be able to know in yourself that's actually not the right thing for me to be doing right now. And stopping that and putting the energy into things that are going to work because your heart's in it and you can build something from that. So these knowing things are really important, I think, as far as moving in the right directions and being able to leave things behind. I mean, if I continued to do that course, it would just be a struggle every time. And why would I do that to myself? This is where we need to understand that's not about being courageous or brave. That's just being stupid. You need to actually go, yeah, actually, that doesn't work.
mm.
Knowing that.
Yeah, and it takes that self-awareness piece as a small business owner because and I guess probably just in life too, but professionally, knowing when to pull the plug when something isn't working. It's instinctive, it's intuitive, but it's also to know that something's not going to take off overnight. You have to be
Stick with it.
consistent and resilient with it and stick with it. But yeah, there's plenty of experiences that I've had that of things that haven't worked, and as part of Kaizen, a Japanese term of continual improvement. Whether or not that thing I just put out there, or a course I taught, or a Reiki session I provided, I always want to take a moment and see how it went. How did the course go? Did it go well? Do I feel I addressed the issues well? Was I present with my students? Whatever things that might and whatever might have come up in the course, and try to make improvements or try to learn from our mistakes. And but yeah, not doing things that aren't working. It's hard that we don't have the energy for.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, thinking about what other things hold us back.
Oh, I have a list,
Yeah.
Bronwyn. Things that hold you back. But well, here's a subtle fear, I think, is that healing and self-growth will take me away from something that I love. And that's
I
very
love that.
tender and it's true. And we probably all struggle with that in some way.
Yeah.
But the thing is if you really love something, why wouldn't they want you to heal or to grow? So, sometimes the process of healing brings transformation. It brings change into our life. It gives us a different perspective about relationships or jobs or life experiences. It allows us to change. And so, with that, sometimes our perspective changes for sure. And I feel that way sometimes about Reiki as well. I love Reiki. It's provided so much healing and transformation, but sometimes I have to wonder, like, is is this the thing that's professionally serving me, supporting me?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's all healthy
of
to
course.
question that at
Yeah.
times. Or even when we love something, are we in right relationship with it? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And I have to totally agree with you. I think that to question what you're doing works on a number of levels as a business. Yep. Are you making enough money? The joy of that. Knowing how much money you'd like to make, what's enough, what isn't enough. Yeah, important. If you're not making enough, can you rejig it so that you're still doing something that you love and yet being able to, mix it up with something else? I think that's pride, isn't it? Using words, thinking about words, not being too prideful in our work. That can hold us back. That, oh, I'm meant to be this. I am this. And that's not maybe a realistic thing. And it may not be very honest or truthful either. And so, really, once again, always trying to tap back into that truth of who you are and what's going on in your life at this moment. And as we know, each moment's going to be different. So, in this moment it might be this, but tomorrow it could possibly be something else.
I think what you were saying was really relevant too, is are we waking up making enough money? I actually just started working with a new coach today. And one of the things we talked about, how she was like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to make six figures in 6 months or 6 weeks or whatever. We know we shouldn't actually hang our success on that kind of hook, because we will, that is such a high standard. It really is. It's a lot of money to make from a solo practitioner business. Certainly, I love to make six figures. I'm not there yet, but it doesn't mean that I'm not successful either. When we try to use these external metrics to define our success, I think we really lose that bigger picture of all we learned from the process and gained from the experience. But we do need to tend to our bottom line. But on the path with Reiki and following my purpose, I've really learned that the money is always going to be there when I need it, and it doesn't always look exactly how I think it's going to look, but it's there.
That sounds like a really clear intention to me. Having that really clear intention around things like money, but not just money, just about your practice, how you want your practice to look. What I'm talking about is just how you believe, how you live, and what it means. I have very fixed beliefs about my life, and it doesn't sound very flexible, but my intention is just very clear about certain aspects of my life, and those things aren't really negotiable, and I want those things to be the way they are. I work at those things being the way they are, and that's really important to me. I think that's a really good thing to have. And on the other side, I mentioned flexibility, didn't I? On the other side, also having elements of flexibility around that, but intention really create such a clear intention. I don't even need to, I mean, even saying create sounds like something in the future, something out there, but I'm embodying, we need to embody that intention and have that as who we are. And then everything that we do flows from that, because then I am working maybe longer hours sometimes than I possibly should be. But because it's coming from that strong intention, then I do it with joy and interest and curiosity. And that is the life I want to live. I always had this thing when I started working with the system of Reiki 25 years ago. I thought, I want this to be my life. I don't want this to be my work or my hobby or my any of those things. I actually want to integrate it into my life. And that is what I do. When I'm doing things from that perspective. It's just natural. I'm not creating it. It's just a natural way of existing. And that feels really good and interesting. I love it.
I love that you've created that clarity within you, and to walk your life from that perspective. I think that that's really brave, but also very empowered, right? Cool how you're just talking about living your Reiki. I mean, I can take those words in, Bronwyn, and just receive them, but I also just want to say, wow, that's incredible that you've lived your life that way, because you must have had to be really strong to live your Reiki and have it come from your sweet perspective. Yeah, it's not it's a beautiful truth, but it's also takes a lot of strength. I'm just saying that.
Thank you, Carrie. And I must say, I always feel I've always had a very strong core inside of me. Not necessarily a brave one, but definitely a strong one.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, okay. I'm back to my list. I think some of it is a question. Things that might hold you back is, who will I become?
Hmm.
Maybe that relates a little bit to the last topic you just shared, because I'm just going to live my Reiki. I found this and I'm going to live it. I'm not going to compartmentalize it. I mean, then you made that courageous choice and then you just live it. And I think when we're starting a Reiki journey, whether we just found Reiki or considering opening a Reiki practice or 10 years into it, I think we still might be questioning, who will I become? Will I become this Reiki evangelist? Will I become one of those people on Instagram that's just covered in crystals? And yeah, there's always a good question there. Will
Yeah.
I be somehow different or more special than I am? How will people perceive me? I think at times where I've confronted that myself, I've really realized that I don't need to become anybody else but myself. I don't need to become some super pranified yoga instructor or super fit or somebody who is, I don't know, on Instagram constantly sending Reiki to you or anything like that. I don't have to do that if I don't feel comfortable doing that, if that
Yeah.
doesn't feel like me. And if it feels like you, we have all different types of people who feel that that feels aligned with them, then go for it. But that's what the diversity of it is. That we all don't have to have the same perspective or approach. And in fact, we learn so much from each other.
Yeah, true. I was just thinking with all of that, this also has to do with finding meaning in our lives, if we take it to that level. And something I think that we all need, everybody, is meaning in life. And we find that in all different places. And I think what I was talking about before is finding meaning in life through this practice and allowing it to be the thing that powers me, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that felt right. But that's not the same for everybody, obviously. It is a sort of practice that does support that concept, but it doesn't have to be the overall overarching thing. And there's lots of places where we can find meaning in life. And I think that was something that I think it's been really helpful though for me in that respect. It sort of gives that sort of thing like a rock or something to hold on to in times when things aren't that great. And it's got different things in it, whether it be the precepts or whether it be meditation or whether it be teaching these things that help me get a sense of myself. That I found really valuable. That certainly doesn't hold me back. It actually does the opposite, and it just gives me grounding to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's good to know that that's also one of the things that you're doing within Reiki on purpose. It
Yeah.
gives this practice gives you purpose and gives you that sense of purpose. I think sometimes about my mom. My mom was a stay-at-home mom caring for four of our kids. And when we all kind of pranced off to college, she really battled with losing a sense of purpose. Her
Oh,
purpose was taking care of us, our children, feeding us, keeping us well. And without that sense of purpose, it was a whole kind of crisis of consciousness for her. And so I think it's just important to be intentional. I'm doing
mm,
this, or why am I creating this post, or why am I
yeah.
sharing Reiki professionally when there might be other things that we could do that pay us better or give us a 401k or pay time off or vacation time, things like that. But we're doing it because we gain so much purpose from this. We gain so much sense of both ourselves and it helps us access our dharma, our life purpose, our capacity to give back to the world and
Yeah.
even to the practice of Reiki, that we've gained so much from this practice. So why share it? Because I know how valuable it is. I know how valuable it is, how life changing it is, and it gives me a lot of purpose and a lot of joy and a sense of reward for when I see it make open windows for people, when I see it make dramatic shifts in their life, in sense of their self-worth, self-esteem, their outlook on life, their ability to be seen. I think Reiki has this way of kind of helping those of us who just want to be buried under a rock. Just don't look at me, I'm hiding over here. It lights you up, and you just are actually, I don't want to be buried under a rock. I want to be seen. I want people to
Yeah.
know me. I want to be acknowledged for my gifts. in what I do in the world and to be loved. So I think that's huge.
My God, this was a good therapy session, Carrie.
Yes, feel good. Oh, okay. So I have one more for you, though. I
Okay.
do have one. So the one more that I have is people come into it thinking that they'll be an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that works for some people. It tends to be a minority of the people, whether I've seen it within Reiki or in yoga, but some people come out of a Reiki course and just open up their practice and it's just takes off and they're full of clients. And same with yoga, take a training, a teacher training, and then just start teaching and their classes are full and they're just on their merry way.
Yeah.
That has never really been my story, and I'm working on rewriting the story. But typically, it took me a lot of time to get the wheels rolling for me. My success kind of trickled in. There was no overnight success, but there was continued success because I just kept going with it, and kept going with it helped me create momentum, longevity, a lot of experience. I learned how to pick myself up more times than
Wow.
I did
Wow.
not, and
Mm.
and that I'm grateful for that because it's really shaped who I am too. That I've learned so much in that process that I'm always learning from the journey with Reiki, and that I don't tether my sense of self-worth or success based on these external
Mm.
conditions. And what I found is the people who are the overnight successful, and then suddenly they plateau and things get different or things get hard or challenging. And they tend to go through a really intense cycle whenever the plateau kind of trickles off. And yeah, it's so good to know what stage we're in and where we're at in our process and what we're expecting as we open our doors or continue our journey with Reiki.
Yeah. And one thing that I was thinking about was about women in this whole story. Yeah. Because we talked about visibility. And if you think culturally, women were only visible in the home and as adjuncts to men, wife, daughter, mother, crone. But this thing of us no longer being an adjunct to another gender means that it's actually a little more difficult for us. And I believe that's true. And you just spoke about your mum, Carrie, and I think that that is the truth of it. I think for women, there are these points where we, especially when our children are grown up, if we've had children, that point of not being the mother anymore and being what am I and finding meaning and purpose in life, that it can be quite difficult. So just thinking about putting ourselves out there visibly, we're not so used to it, but more than that, our world, and by our world, I mean both men and women, are not used to seeing women out there either. I'm not saying that it's men against women, it's our culture and the way that it's set up. And it's harder for women to be seen. I asked Google AI. I knew that there was studies about whether women get more negative responses from being on forums than men do. And I'll just tell you what the answer was. Yes, was the first word. Studies show, yeah, studies show women often receive more negative responses online and in forums. It is more difficult for women, and whether we want to acknowledge that or not, I often find as women we want to be brave and we want to get out there and we don't want to look at that. But it is true, our culture has been set up for men, and women are moving through into those spaces, but it is more of a challenge. So, recognizing that as well and knowing that it's okay. And the more that we do it, the more that we keep at it, the more that we're out there doing it, that the easier it's going to be, a little more for ourselves, but also for the women who come after us.
So true.
Yeah.
I've been really feeling that with my mentorship group. I have this new round of mentees, and they're really at that juncture, right, where they're facing all of these fears, but they are so brave. And there is this kind of gut instinct is telling them, go for it, go for it. And that's really inspiring to see. And it's really cool when they experience, they're like, I thought this was going to be really hard, but I actually really like it. It feels good. It feels very natural. So I'm seeing some of that. And then I'm also seeing some people where I knew I was going to struggle in this area and it was really hard, and it's still really hard to write about myself, to put myself out there, or whatever conflict it is. And I'm really butchering this, but it's a saying in the Eastern world, and I feel terrible. I couldn't really locate it right before our episode, but the saying is that it goes something like, the things that don't come naturally are often the things that you really need to learn. And I think for me, it's been marketing or writing about myself. It never came naturally, but I've gotten better at it. And now sometimes when I read my bio, I'm really proud of myself. Really, really
Yeah.
proud of myself and all the things that I've created and done. Super meaningful and super rewarding.
Yeah, Carrie, you're always putting yourself out there, and that is just brave and amazing. It is something that I think probably for a lot of women, especially, it's great to see, because it means that you forge a path forward by doing that. Yeah. And I see, just with myself on that line, is that I have this terrible habit of not saying I and saying we. And I was listening to myself on a recording of me teaching the other day, and I kept saying we. And I'm like, it's like the royal we. Who the hell is we? But it's like too scared to actually take the acknowledgement that it's I, and that the I, it's me speaking, and there's not like 10 of me. It says something, and it's saying that it can be difficult. It can be difficult to stand up there and be ourselves, and to speak from ourselves with the courage that it doesn't matter what others might think or say or do. And if we feel that, if we feel strong in what we're saying, then we should do it. Get out there.
Mm-hmm. So true. And thank you for sharing that. It is true. It is true that it's harder for women. It absolutely is. And we tend to not get as much credit. Women tend to be really suffering from imposter syndrome. And it's like a real psychological thing where you put your all into something and it's either crickets, or people judge you or criticize you, and you don't get the recognition that one deserves for the amount of work, inner and outer, that's put into things. I think we should also not bypass that, and not
Yeah.
bypass the fact that that's happening and it's in our psyche and we're struggling with it. I've definitely struggled with it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've overcome it by any means. It's something that's always going to sneak up. But when I can sit with the practice of Reiki, I can remember my true self. I can reconnect with my pure heart and mind, and that the beauty and of creating something, of weaving something healing into the matrix, into the world, and to really
Beautiful.
value that for
Mm.
myself. I think that that's when we start to see shifts too. So
Mm.
for everybody listening, I hope that this conversation was helpful for you. If this was the conversation that picked you up from being knocked down 7 times, it's the 8th time you got up, well, that makes me really happy. I'm sure you all have your own experiences with this topic. Please feel free to share that with us in the comments. We see you. I want to see more brilliant, bright Reiki women out there sharing their gifts and wisdom, not being afraid to be seen or visible for who they are, getting paid the amount that they deserve. So many things. So keep going, keep going. You got this, girl. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.